Welcome to Somebody You Love, or The Sale of Two Titties. I'm Jenna Love.
And I'm Holly Hart.
And we're experts in disappointing our parents, breaching community guidelines, and banging the people who vote against our rights. Before getting into today's episode, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the lands from which we are recording. Those are the Darug and Gundungurra people, where I am, and the Ngunnawal people, where Holly is. We'd like to honour the power of Indigenous survival, resistance and resilience, and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and wherever we are across this land, it was stolen.
We'd also like to remind you guys that the sex industry is very broad, and when we speak, we are speaking from our own experience with all the privilege that we have personally. In this episode, we're just talking specifically about getting started as an independent, full-service sex worker, as that's where we have the most experience. This is not a hard and fast guide. We're not encouraging you to join the sex industry, but we're basically just giving you an idea that if this is something that you have been considering, then yeah, these are some things we think you should think about. And this is also only relevant for Australia, because that's the only place that the only country in which we've both worked.
So we're going to really pare this back and start at the very beginning. This will probably be a multi-part series because I don't know about Holly, but I've got a lot to say on the subject. And I think today's episode is really going to be, we're not even going to get to the first booking. Like, we are talking about the very, very beginning of things. And the first kind of thing is this the right job for you? Is this something that you should consider for yourself? And what is it that's involved? And I think this is the first example of us needing to clarify that we are talking about being independent escorts. If the sex industry is something that you need to enter because you don't have a lot of other great choices, or something that you feel that you need to do, it may well be that independent escorting isn't the best place to start, simply because I think, like, going to work in a parlor, whether it's a brothel or a massage place, something like that, or a strip club or one of those sorts of things, in my opinion, is probably going to get you on your feet a bit quicker. Work, like running your own independent escort business, there's a lot of legwork to do, and I think it's probably not the best option in that case. But if you are somebody who is sitting there going, I wonder if that's something I could do, and you already have employment, or you're already, in a financial position where it's not sort of desperate and urgent, then this might be the podcast for you. So what do we think is involved? What kind of person does it take?
I think that was really beautifully said. I don't think I could have said that in a way where I didn't feel like I was, I don't know, it's such a delicate thing, isn't it, guiding people in the sex industry, because it's such a your mileage may vary thing. But yeah, it is a really good point that setting up a business as an independent sex worker, I think some people start in one way or another and they go, oh my God, well, where's all the customers and why, and they don't realise that it does take a while to get things rolling, and that there's a lot involved. So definitely. I mean,
there's some statistic, isn't there, about how many businesses fail in the first year and how many years it normally takes for a business to earn a profit. And that's what we're talking about here. We've talked about the misconception that sex work is easy money and all of that. But that's the reality. It's if you're wanting to run your own business, it's not quick, easy money at all.
Yeah, we definitely have fewer overheads than, a lot of bricks and mortar businesses or e-commerce and things like that, but there is still a lot to consider. So
yeah, in some ways, I agree. It's maybe not, it's not the same as, say, a retail shop where you're needing to pay a commercial, lease up front, but you do have to have a location. You do, you have to put advertising out there. Like, there are certainly overheads that are up front. And that's what's tricky.
So what sort of person? Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think most sex workers make it work. I think, generally you want to be someone who's quite self-directed, who can manage your own schedule or manage your workload. You want to be someone who is quite, I know sex workers who are asexual, but I think, being open to sexuality or having, sexual experience is quite important. You have to be able to be a self-starter. I think there has to be a lot of motivation and a lot of organizational skills involved. But then, like, you know, we speak often about people. We know a lot of sex workers who are neurodivergent, who really just kill it. They're not actually organized people or motivated people at all, but somehow they pull it together. And I very well may be one of those people. So yeah, I think that's some things to consider.
Or you might be neurodivergent in the way that I am, which is obsessively organized, and that can also work and can also be to your detriment. There's pros and cons to everything. I think that, like, I've always had this thing where I adore the sex industry. I love the people in it. I know that it is so the right place for me, and I know that you feel the same way, Holly. But at the same time, the other thing is I have never in my life said to somebody, I think you would be really good in the sex industry. I think that everyone can succeed in it, and the diversity of the industry is one of the best things about it. But that being said, like, it's not fucking easy, and it does require a kind of weirdly specific set of traits that those of us who have found our way here and who are wanting to be here for a long time seem to have in common to an extent.
Go on. I'm curious.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, I don't know.
Don't act so surprised. I just feel like it's just such a, like you said, the diversity is so huge that I can't nail it down to a few things. So come on, hit us with what you think.
Okay, so I think for one, like, I have a problem with the idea of sort of marketing the industry to people and saying to somebody, hey, you should come and do this, because I think it's a little bit pimpy. I think it's a little bit like the industry is just so personal. I don't think that it's a great idea to be putting that in someone's head. If somebody comes to me and says, I want to do this, fuck me, I'll help them as much as possible. I'll give them as many resources as I can. I just don't like the idea of sort of planting that idea in somebody's head. And I think what I'm talking about being somebody suited to it is what I'm really saying is I don't come across that many people that I think would be suited to being in the industry a long time and reaching, you know, maybe whatever it is that means success for them. So I think something that's so wonderful about the sex industry is how broad it is and how there are access points for everyone. But if we're talking about running your own business as a private escort, that specifically and wanting to do that as a career, like if you're looking at Holly and I and kind of wanting to live the life that we lead, I just don't know if that's for everyone. That's all. I think a really massive quality that's needed is both having a lot of empathy and a lot of compassion, and at the same time being able to maintain boundaries. And I think those two things are really tricky to find together. And I certainly know that I didn't have both of those when I started. I had the empathy and the compassion, but I did not have the ability to maintain my boundaries. And that's something that I've definitely gained from the sex industry, but it would have been a lot better for me if I'd had it before going into it. And I think that applies to a lot of jobs like nursing or working in social work, where you know you're really going to feel right in the job and you're going to do really well at the job if you are somebody who is empathetic and somebody who can really connect with other people. But that can also be your downfall, and that's something that can make the job actually really difficult.
No, I would agree. Yeah. I think a lot of people do have empathy. I think it's, you know, a rare thing to not be an empathetic person. But I think boundary setting is a big thing that that it's really important in the job. But I think there's a lot of learning of that along the way for a lot of us, which is really healthy. It's a great skill to learn, I think, you know,
Definitely.
for your personal life as well.
I think something to keep in mind is the ability to like manage inconsistent finances, because it's not a 9-to-5, it's not a regular income. If you get lucky, you might end up with a regular or two who are really, really regular, and then you do have sort of that income you can rely on to an extent. But generally, it's not income that you can rely on. And you know, we've talked before on the show about how we don't get sick leave and we don't get holiday pay and all that sort of stuff. And you are the only person who can run your business. You're the only person that can do the job. You can't get a DEP in, you know. So I think that keeping in mind that if you break your foot, that might be 6 weeks without income. Not necessarily. There are certainly ways to work around that. But
Yeah.
but that is the reality of it. You know, I've had operations and I've had to take weeks and months off work, and those are the facts. So even though it can look on paper like there's a lot of money that can potentially come in, the big thing to keep in mind is that it's not consistent. I would always say if you're somebody who is in a job at the moment, you have regular employment and you're looking at becoming an independent escort, I would definitely suggest not quitting your job and throwing all your eggs in the basket. I would definitely suggest starting up as somebody who only does sex work on the weekends or whenever it is that you can work around your job, and then build up your business like you would with any kind of startup, I guess, right? Because, you know, in this economy, having a regular paycheck is fucking valuable.
A big one that we've spoken about a lot on the show before is about being outed and about your privacy and your safety in that regard. So I think that ties in with, particularly if you are working another job at the same time as you're starting sex work, you want to be really careful with that as well. You know, like Jenna said, you don't want to throw your job in and go, I'm going to be a sex worker, and run off into the hills and think that's all going to pan out, because a lot of the time it doesn't. It is something that you would want to try first and dabble in and slowly grow. But I've had friends who have started doing that and then been outed in one way or another to their civilian workplaces, as you put it. So it can be really fraught. So these are the times that you need to be considering, you know, being really careful what you post online, being careful about anything that's identifying, careful with your clients, your screening processes, so that you make sure that you're not going to bump into your boss as a client or somebody from work, or all of those things, which, you know, we probably will discuss in more detail as we go through this little series. But yeah, you need to recognize that you may be putting yourself in a position every time you post or every time you have an ad up where people in your life could find out, and there could be consequences.
Yeah, I think not underestimating the stigma is a huge one. I can't tell you how many people have told me that there is no stigma against being a sex worker anymore, that it's no problem, and they don't care who knows, and they wouldn't be bothered doing it. They'd tell everyone. And I think that on the one hand, like Holly, you and I getting out there and doing this podcast and being so open about our stuff can make people think that it's a lot easier than perhaps we make it look. And it's really easy to say there's no stigma, and I wouldn't care what people thought when you're not actually a sex worker who has experienced that. And I think you and I are as close as we can possibly get to being people who don't care what other people think and living our lives loud and proud. But that doesn't mean that we haven't had really awful consequences. I mean, I share with Holly every freaking time I get outed and doxed, and, you know, and I don't want to go into too much detail about that because it is about my personal life. But yeah, I don't know what to say. Even as out as we are, and as much as we love our jobs, and as much as you go, you know, oh, all the people I hang around with are really cruisy and easygoing, there's this thing with sex work. It doesn't matter how fucking cruisy and easygoing someone might be. You just never know what their views are on sex work. And particularly people, they go, oh, my friends are really like lefty. Mate, the antis on the left are arguably fucking worse than the antis on the right. Like that, I'd love if that was the case. And I love that you don't think that there's stigma. And obviously, if you've listened to all our episodes, you will have heard about plenty of it. But I just think going into it, be cautious. I would honestly recommend don't go into it and be me and Holly and be out there. And, you know, I would suggest kind of dipping your toe in. I don't know if that's the wrong thing to say, but I would go gently.
As we said, this is all very broad advice, and different things will work for different people. But yeah, I definitely would advise a gently approach. When I started as a private worker, my ads were all no face at all. They were very limited information about my location, so I don't put the exact, and I still to this day don't put the exact suburb in which I live. I give a really broad area. Back in the day, my social media wouldn't allude to my pets or anything. Like, it was all very contained, so that I didn't have to have that outing experience. And I still did. People still recognized my boobs. One guy somehow recognized really vague ads. He was a colleague of a new friend that I was making. And he started, sending me these weird fake booking requests and then turning up to things where her and I were going out together and not disclosing that he knew that I was, it was this whole weird fucked up thing. So I guess my point is, you think that everyone's sort of, it's not, there's some weird shit that happens and you learn, I suppose.
And scary.
It's quite scary.
Like we're not saying that we're necessarily, that being in the sex industry means you will be a victim of violence, but I fucking guarantee you will be a victim of threats of violence. And I can't tell you how fucking awful that is. It's really scary. And I think what a lot of people maybe don't realize is that extends beyond what you're putting out there under your sex work persona. So if you post a picture of yourself as your sex work persona and then you post that same picture on your personal social media, people will connect them. The internet will connect them. Like it's cannot incredible. Do that. Yeah. And if you're somebody who loves posting, like I genuinely think if you want to become an independent escort, you need to let go of your own personal social media accounts. You can no longer be constantly posting who you're out with, what you're doing. Yeah. Again, maybe I know there are some sex workers who do that, but generally they've been in the industry a long time and they've dealt with a lot of shit, and that's the point that they've reached.
Yeah, they're prepared. They understand the consequences involved, and they're comfortable.
And they've probably committed that, well, this is me for the rest of my life. And you might think that it's going to be you for the rest of your life. I sound like such an old woman here, but you do not know what you want. You don't. What if you have kids? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with being a sex worker and having kids. But then what happens if they get taken away from you because somebody finds out you're a sex worker? I'm just saying that there are very, very real negative consequences that we can't necessarily. Like, I didn't know that when I put my face on the internet, it meant that I could never go to the USA. I didn't know that. And I know people there. I have friends there, and I'd love to go and see them, and I can't.
Yeah, I think I would definitely at least give it a year or two for you to experience a wide range of situations and stigma, or, it sounds horrible, go through all the bad stuff before you make a decision. But, hopefully you don't have a lot of bad stuff, but just to feel out the broader life experience of it, because, one or two bookings, you might think this is awesome and I love this. And you probably do. It's sex work is a lot of fun and we're really passionate about it for a reason. But I think getting into it and doing it for a consistent amount of time before you make the decision to out yourself to the world or to expose yourself to greater dangers, take it easy. And then once you're committed, that's fine. Throw it all in there and enjoy yourself. But I think take it slow.
Absolutely.
Take it slow.
And also, we're not saying don't tell anyone. I think it's quite a good idea if you do have a trusted friend or a partner or family that you can speak to. I'm not saying don't tell anyone. Just be really, easy does it. Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I also, I want to be realistic. I don't want to paint it as something that it isn't.
I've had people ask, well, what about if the person's ugly that you have to have sex with, And I'm like, what? What do you mean? That's not a big deal at all. Before I was a sex worker, I had sex with a lot of people. Let me tell you, some of those dudes were not babes. But that's not any sort of measure as to the decency of a person or their attractiveness. Physical attraction is so subjective, and sexual attraction and what makes somebody turn you on and what thrills you in the bedroom can be entirely separate from a conventionally attractive look. So there is so much more. We've discussed this before. There is so much that makes a person sexy, and what you think is sexy might be very different to someone else. But if you're not comfortable having sex with a pretty broad range of people, then it's probably not for you. If you only want your clients to be X, Y, and Z, it's going to be quite limiting, and it's going to be quite hard for you to ascertain those details. I think, you can definitely have parameters and boundaries. I know a lot of workers who won't see clients under X age, because they don't want to see young people who are really hard work. And then I know some workers who struggle with seeing younger clients because they're just exhausting sometimes. And so they won't see people any younger than X age, and vice versa. So I think you can definitely still assert boundaries, but you've got to be pretty attracted to or able to find attraction in a wide range of individuals.
And I think also be able to face the reality that you may be having sexual experiences with people that you cannot find attractive. Like that, I think that those are the facts.
So true.
And I'm not talking about physical attractiveness. Like you just, there are times, and, you know, we're lucky enough that if we have this experience with somebody, we don't have to see them again. But there are times when somebody is just, you might despise the person you're with. I've had a couple of clients and they are very much in the minority. And I'm really grateful for that. But I've had some clients who the thought of having sex with them has made me sick because of the views they've shared. And, you know, I've shared some of those on the show. And that is the reality. And no, you know, payment does not negate consent. You can say no at any fucking time. And I'm sure we'll go into more detail about that later. But once they've paid and you're already in there and they've not actually done anything wrong, you just fucking hate them. It's real, you know, like I can't say to somebody, no, you need to leave because they're your political views. I mean, I can. I absolutely can. But I'm probably not gonna. And I'm probably just going to go, just fucking get it over and done with. And then he leaves and then I never see him again. And I think that maybe can be gross for some civilians to hear. But that's the way I make it work.
Yeah, I think one of the last people that I cut off was a, you know, conventionally attractive dude. There was nothing, you know, particularly unattractive about him at first sight. But, you know, he turned up incredibly drunk, which to start with is not very sexy. He was just rough, like not abusive, but just a bit, you know, settle down. You're being a bit, and then he started telling me about how coronavirus is a conspiracy and how Trump is a great leader and how sex workers. He was actually. You might need a trigger warning for this, but he started telling me about this recent assault of a sex worker and about how he knew the guy who did it and he wouldn't do something like that. And I'm sitting there in this booking going, I do not want to fuck you, right? I think you're a bit of a fucking douche. In fact, not even a bit. But I was like, you know, anyway, we got through as much as we could because as he was incredibly drunk and we've discussed the side effects of heavy alcohol consumption before. Yeah. And he left and I thought, and he sent me a message saying, I look forward to seeing you again next time. And I thought, no, never seeing you again.
No fucking way.
And it's not particularly traumatic, but it's incredibly unattractive. That sort of thing, you go, oh God. So yeah, not fun times. Fortunately, because we have really, you and I both have quite strong branding that I think publicises our views, we tend to get clients who are very strongly aligned with us politically and morally and all that sort of stuff, which is wonderful. But every now and then, and it's not just about politics, we're just using that as an example, but sometimes you'll have a booking with someone who says things and you think, holy shit, you are, you're not someone who I would find attractive ever in the real world because of your views or who you are as a person is distasteful.
Yeah. But I mean, that being said, I've spoken to a number of sex workers who said that sex work really opened their eyes to the broad spectrum of what is attractiveness. And they, you know, before sex work were really picky about particular things, about who they might have sex with. And since doing it, they were like, oh, fuck, a lot of people are really sexy and I can have really nice experiences with a lot of people. So maybe it would broaden you. I don't know.
Yeah, I was probably more shallow before I started sex work. I probably thought, you know, that I had certain types and stuff, but now I just think everyone's hot. I just get horny for everyone, like stupid. Like,
I think I almost had the opposite experience because not that I like, but I just didn't think that, you know, conventionally attractive people would see anything in me. So I just never, I probably was really fucking rude to them because I just never really engaged with them. Like I was like, you're just not going to be interested in spending any time with me, which is really stupid. And I feel silly for thinking that. But now that I've had a lot of very conventionally attractive people book to spend time with me, I'm like, oh, they also seem to like me. So that's nice.
So weird.
Yeah. Have you checked out the Somebody You Love Patreon yet?
For just $3 a month, you can get every episode without ads and you get them a day early.
For $6 a month, you get all of our bloopers and behind-the-scenes action.
For $10 a month, you get monthly bonus episodes.
And for $20 a month, you also get the bonus episodes as videos.
You can cancel anytime, and when you sign up, you get access to everything that we've posted so far.
We also have annual subscriptions where you save 10% and get 1 month free.
Patreon.com/somebodyyoupod, as in podcast.
You do have to type in the URL because Patreon hides 18 plus creators from the search, so you most likely won't be able to find us by searching. That's patreon.com/somebodyyoupod.
So when you enter the industry, often it's a very lonely journey. These days, I think with social media, it's becoming less lonely, and there are more avenues to experience a little bit of what's going on or to get a viewpoint without having to jump straight into it. But back in my day, there wasn't as much access to that sort of thing. So it was incredibly lonely a long time ago, and you just have to push through and maybe make some friends in the industry while you worked in a brothel and find your way through. And I didn't know about things like peer orgs and stuff, which are now have really strong social media presences and which we always try to promote here on the show. It is really important.
I should say they try to have strong social media presences, but they are subject to all the same community guidelines that we are. True. One of the reasons it's difficult for them to get their messages out is that they get banned off social media and blah, blah, blah all the time. They get censored despite, being funded by our federal and state governments, which is, they are legitimate organizations and they, they're too saucy.
Very disappointing. But it's really important, particularly when you're first entering this industry, to have some sort of connection to resources, to safety advice, to just advice in general about the work. So the foremost one which we like to promote are the peer orgs.
And of course, we always have the Australian peer orgs listed in our description, so you can suss them out. I think something I wanted to mention briefly is this concept of mentoring. And if you have sussed out some sex work stuff on social media, you may have come across the idea of mentoring. And this is where established workers offer a service where they will mentor you or give advice. And I don't want to outright say that I'm very against the concept, even though I a little bit am. But I think that there is probably a place for it where maybe if you're already an established worker and you're looking to work with somebody on some specific area, like you want to hone in on branding or you want to look at your scheduling or something like that, I think it maybe has a place. But I really think that at the core of the sex industry, the core of being successful is being true to yourself. And I think it's such a personal experience. So I have a little bit of a niggle about the idea of somebody kind of mentoring somebody else into the industry, particularly in terms of being paid for that and being paid a substantial amount for that. Now, people may think I'm a hypocrite because there is literally a tab on my website that says mentoring. But in the first line on that page, you'll see that I say I hate the term, and I like to call it a pick your brain session with Jenna, where people can just have a chat to me and I'll share my experiences with things. But that's all that can be done. I can't say you should do this. Well, I wouldn't be comfortable saying that. I can only say, well, this is how I dealt with that. That might be an option, but here were the pros and here were the cons, and here's what I learned from that. So I'm not saying don't get mentoring, but particularly when you're starting out, and particularly if it's expensive, I don't know if it's the best use of your money, particularly when we have such a strong culture of peer support within the sex industry. And when I say peer support, I mean free peer support, skill sharing. And so the peer orgs are wonderful. A lot of them are able to give out workers packs, which are packs with free condoms and lube and all that sort of stuff. And if you're like me, when I first started engaging with peer orgs, I didn't want to take those things because I thought that they were more for people in need. And I was like, I can pay for my own condoms. I don't need to take those. But it was explained to me that, they are funded for that purpose. And we want to show the government that there is a need for those things. So every worker pack that gets given out gets written down as a worker pack taken. So it's actually, you're helping yourself and them by taking those resources. And sexual health clinics, they vary a little bit in terms of whether they're whorephobic or not, but they also usually will give out a bunch of free stuff. So definitely take advantage of that. And I think most of the organizations have outreach workers that you can speak to, and they are all peers. They are all people who have been where you are. It is all free. And I can't overestimate how important it is to connect with other sex workers, particularly in your area, or at least in your legal jurisdiction. And I don't mean just meet them online. I mean literally meet other sex workers. There's a huge amount of information that can be shared that we do not share publicly, that we will not share on this podcast, and that we will not share with somebody unless we can absolutely 100% identify and verify that they are a sex worker, or that they are even if they're just starting out. So you have to do that legwork. You have to start talking to people, and it can be intimidating to talk to independent escorts, I think. So a really easy way to do that is just contact your local peer org and just get that conversation started.
I see what you're saying about mentoring, but I do see a need for it. I think there is a lot of resource sharing involved in sex work, but I also think sometimes people really want somebody to sit down with them and to explain X or Y or Z, or like, how did you grow your customer base and how did you do this, or really specific things. And they want to sit down with somebody for an hour or two and really get that information. And I think we have such a culture in sex work of, making sure people are paid for what they provide, and making sure that sex workers are paid for their work. So I think, like you said, it's probably not ideal for somebody just starting out to drop a whole lot of money on something like that. But I also do think there are times when somebody just needs a little bit of help with growing their business in one way or another, and there's somebody that they know or that they admire within the industry or perceive as successful that they think they can learn something from, and they want to pay for that information. Very much like your pick your brain style, and I don't know if it's just a semantic thing being called
Perhaps
mentoring.
It's
Perhaps
it is. I just see mentoring. I'm like, what the fuck? Are you the Dalai Lama? Like, what?
I think it's really
so
valuable.
Maybe it's just semantics.
Maybe it is. But I, like you said, I definitely wouldn't be dropping a shitload. I don't think you have to be starting in the adult industry and go, oh my God, I need to get this girl to mentor me or this worker to mentor me, and that's going to be XYZ $1,000. That's definitely not. And most workers that I know have never had mentoring and do great. So I think it's an important thing, but probably not for a starting, or you would need to spend a fortune as a beginning sex worker. I also think in terms of meeting other sex workers, I would agree that's a massive thing to really grow your knowledge. And I think a really wonderful way to do that is to get on the social media. I still know a lot of sex workers who don't engage with their social media a lot, and I didn't for a long time. I thought, I'm not going to post, on, as Holly on anything. But gradually over time, I sort of got into Twitter, and now it's where I post every inane thought that I ever have. And and it's grown. And, it's not just an advertising platform or a place to connect with clients. It also does function as a way to get the vibes of other sex workers and sort of casually connect with them in a way that's really low pressure and see who you vibe with. And then, if you do decide that you want to catch up and meet with each other, it's not as a confronting, awkward thing as contacting an entire stranger and going, hello, I want to meet people in the area. You sort of already have that rapport. So I've been telling a few sex workers I know who are not on Twitter, you've got to get involved in Twitter for so many reasons. It really is incredible for growing your business. A lot of my clients come from Twitter, but also a lot of my friends, and a lot of the good vibes I get from my peers and the growing friendships is facilitated by having that access to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I worked in the industry for years without social media, and I didn't understand why I would have social media. And multiple people said, you should get on Twitter. I was like, what? Who the fuck uses Twitter?
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
I was the same.
I tell you who does, hookers.
Yeah.
I was on there for a couple of weeks, and I was like, holy fuck. I have been doing this all wrong. I did not know that there was a community. I didn't know that there was a massive, wonderful, supportive, loving community. And yes, with any social media, there will be quote unquote drama. There'll be people who piss people off. There'll be shit stirrers. There'll be trolls and anonymous accounts. But the good that you can get out of it, even if, as Holly said, you don't have to post on it all the time as a marketing tool. If you are using it and just getting yourself into the community, and it doesn't, I don't know, sometimes maybe it sounds overwhelming to say, like, get yourself in the community. But the community is, like, very understanding. A lot of us have social anxieties and issues. A lot of us, don't like meeting up in the mornings. A lot of it, like, you're amongst a lot of like-minded people. So there's no expectation that you be perfect or anything like that. But just jump in there and start sussing it out. That's the key. And then, meet up with people. I know that's intimidating, but I'll never forget the day that I met 2 other sex workers and it changed everything for me. And I can't go into any more detail than that.
Was it me?
But you just have to trust me. It was not you.
Oh.
Don't even remember meeting you. No, I do.
You do, you little shit.
I definitely do.
Obviously, it's really important when you're working in the sex industry to have a pseudonym. Look, there are workers who use their real name. There are workers who have used their real name and have changed back. And it's a totally your choice thing, but it's probably important if you're starting to go with a pseudonym. So you have those privacy measures in place. So people... We've discussed on the show before the potential for people to do stupid things and to stalk you. And I think this is something that I don't think I know any sex workers that haven't had, not even necessarily clients, but just strangers contact them and overstep in one way or another.
It's often not clients.
Yes.
It's often not.
Yeah.
It's complete strangers.
Yeah. So having just that barrier of the name pseudonym is really important just to help prevent people from intruding into your personal life or intruding into your life in a way that you haven't given them access to. I've had clients during the screening process say, well, you don't use your real name, so why should I have to give my real name? Oh, genius take, buddy. Yeah, really smart. But you often are providing solo access to you in a premises. You're giving an address, which could be your home. You're giving a time when you're going to be alone at the home, when you're planning to be sexually available to this person. All of those things can really put you in danger. And so these are all the things that you are making yourself aware of when you're doing this work. You're setting up safety measures to avoid any problems. But a big safety measure that you can take is to make sure that you're not putting your full name out there as well. That can, I think, cause or give people a little bit too much access to things about you that they can use against you. So that's really important. Yeah. I don't think it matters what name you choose. A name's a name, and people have a massive variety of names that seem to work for them.
I was going to say it's probably a good idea to Google any name that you're thinking of picking. What was it recently? And a friend of mine was entering the industry, and I can't remember what name it was, but they thought about something, and I Googled it, and what came up was I can't remember what it was, but it was like a child safety kind of thing. And I was like, oh, bitch, let's not be getting close to that. There are certain things that you're just like, oh, actually, maybe I don't want to be associated with that when people Google it. And also you may want to check if there's anybody in your local area that has a similar name. I did not do this because my name just popped out of my mouth. I didn't do any of the shit that we're telling you all to do, by the way. But that's why I'm telling you, because shit could have been so much better for me. There's a Jenna Love in the US, and you would think that doesn't matter and that people wouldn't get as confused because she is blonde and skinny and, on the other side of the planet. And yet people do still get us confused. I get emails being like, oh, you're in the US. Are you coming back to Australia soon? And I'm like, how did you get my email address for me? And think, I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, that happens. So it's very useful to have a look and see if there's anybody with the same name or a very close name. That being said, there's only a limited amount of kind of names, and you can go for something wacky and made up. Well, Holly Hart and Jenna Love are not the most inventive names. So I don't feel like we can sit here and,
Obviously, I agree with you. Obviously, we have really generic names. Okay, but I feel like there's just so many names out there. And I guess when you're getting in, you just don't know. How's this? I chose my name, 10 years ago? 13, 14 years, a long, long time ago. I've had this name for a long, long, long time. And the exact same year that I chose my name, another girl started working under the name Holly Hart in Canberra. of all the names at all the times.
Doesn't
And
surprise
so
me.
she's on one of the review sites and people are like, oh, and I'm like, that's not me. I don't know. This girl randomly chose my name at the same time and then left the industry. And so now it's just bizarre. But then,
It happens.
Yeah, particularly though in the days now of incredible Google ability and a vast array of sites, the least you can do is have a check beforehand. The amount of new workers I see coming up called Holly H something or H something Hart, and I'm really being really careful not to use a fake example because I'm going to accidentally say someone's name and it's going to sound like I'm calling them out. But and I'm like. And they're in Canberra or they're regularly touring Canberra. And like you said, they could even be on the other side of Australia, but it would still cause just a little bit of a headache for me. And I'm do you have to? Do you have to be called, I don't know, Horley Harter? Do you have to have a name that's one letter off? It's really, guys.
And you know what? Especially if you are not showing your face. I mean, if you're an escort in Australia and you're a hot white girl who doesn't show her face, people are going to get you confused. Like, sorry. But see, the other thing, so you could go for some really unique name. But the other thing to keep in mind is, from a branding perspective, right? If we want to talk about branding and yourself as a brand, then a name that's too common is really difficult to Google because you'll just get a whole bunch of results coming up. But a name that's too unique can also be a problem because people can't spell it, people can't pronounce it, they can't get it straight in their heads. And you would be surprised at how simple a name has to be for people to really struggle. I don't think our friend Isla would mind us saying her name on the show and saying this. This is Isla Faye, who's a Melbourne-based sex worker. Her and I have done a lot of doubles and worked together a lot, so clients often ask me about her. And I cannot tell you the amount of different pronunciations I get. The amount of guys that are like, hey, so your friend is Isla? And I go, oh, Isla. And they go, no. It's like Isla. And I thought Isla was a really common name. It is around white people, right? It's Celtic. It's, like Isla Fisher. But apparently a lot of people really, really struggle with her. And I know it's frustrating for her too. And not in the sense that, we don't care if you get our name wrong. It's not even our fucking name. But it can be, from a brand perspective, you want it to be a name that people can remember and they don't have to, and I don't want to say she's done nothing wrong. Again, I think her name's quite memorable. Yes,
I agree.
You don't want people to be going, oh, who's that? I said, that you want them to be able to go, oh, Coca-Cola. It's just it's branding.
Yeah.
But that being said, there are some hectic names out there and they do really well. So, but it's something to think about, that's all. Do you miss the free and affordable ads and social networks without all of the anti-sex rhetoric?
Assembly4 is a team of sex workers and technologists from Melbourne, Australia, aiming to bring back free and fair advertising and social spaces to the sex working community.
Stepping away from the clunky design of traditional platforms, their two products, Tryst.link and Switter.at, are refreshing and well-needed changes in both presentation and mission.
And both are free to join and open to all.
You can find both of our profiles on Tryst, and I love how it is so clearly designed by sex workers.
Yep, and I love how straightforward and easy it is to use and how much they clearly support the sex working community.
And also how responsive they are when it comes to feedback and customer service.
Check out their website assembly4.com for the word, not the number, for more info.
Pictures. Now, back in my day, you could take a few selfies and whack them on a classified site and that would be enough. I know there are still some sites that work pretty similarly to the old classified sites. Nothing is good. Thank you, Foster Sester. But a lot of those sites, you can get away with some basic, especially if you've got, half the equipment that everyone has these days. A little stand or a little clicker or a ring light of some description. You don't even need any of those. They just take a couple of cute pictures in some lingerie and whack them on some of those sites and that that will be enough. And especially if you're using social media, popping them up on there is plenty. I think a lot of sex workers go, and I certainly did for a long time, as a brothel worker looking to move into private work, I thought, I can't do it until I get professional photos done, because sex workers have to have professional photos. And I had this whole idea that I had to drop a shitload of money to get professional photos before I could even begin in the industry. And that proved false. Like I said, I ended up being my brothel shut down and I just had to scramble. So I used just selfies and stuff, and that was perfectly fine. I think professional photos, when you want to grow your business and when you're definitely committing to it, they are a very valuable thing. And I do highly recommend getting professional photos done eventually, but I don't think that they're necessary for you to succeed as a private escort. I think that's important to let people know that, you don't have to feel that as a financial pressure the minute you start in the industry.
100% agree. I used to be a YouTuber, of all things, and I used to get people asking me advice about starting up a channel. And they would always be like, I've bought this camera and I've got these lights and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, bitch, you haven't even started. You don't even know if you're going to like this. You definitely don't know if you're going to commit to it. And I think the same thing applies with the sex industry. Like, yes, there are some costs that you need to outlay to start with if you're wanting to be an independent escort. But I would definitely say, yes, just start out with some selfies. If you have a mate with a half-decent camera who can take some photos of you that you're comfortable with, that's awesome. As Holly said, if you've got a tripod and a ring light or a fucking window with some good indirect sunlight, just take some stuff yourself. And then if you start enjoying the work and you're like, yeah, this is working out, absolutely invest in some professional pictures. But laying out all that cost and getting everything perfect and waiting until you've got the website done and you've got all the copy and I don't know, is that just procrastination? Are you actually going to get there and do it? Are you going to find out that you hate it and then you've invested all this time and money? I definitely don't think professional pictures are needed initially, but they are a massive help. I think the other thing is to not rely on professional pictures, because in the world we live in at the moment, there is a lot of hesitancy around catfishing and scamming and all of that sort of thing. And one of the easiest ways to show that you are not one of those is to use selfies. And no, that doesn't prove anything. People can steal selfies, and they do. Trust me. My photos are all over the fucking internet. But if somebody can look at your advertising, see these gorgeous professional pictures, go, great, they look amazing, and then go to your social media and go, also, here are some real photos. Yeah. Here are them standing in front of a mirror, whatever, even if it's a MySpace angle, whatever it is. My God, that's just aged me, hasn't it?
Yes.
I'm ancient. But whatever it is, having that personal, real, imperfect images, they're really, really valuable. So I definitely say just don't rely entirely on professional images, even though they make us look so fucking gorge. I think the last thing we'll look at today is setting yourself up with a phone number, an email address, social media accounts, all of that for your work persona. So you are going to need to get a separate phone number. Again, it's the same as what we've said. If you want to just use your personal number, who are we to stop you? But we would strongly advise against that, particularly when starting out. I know that there are phones that exist that can accommodate multiple SIMs. And I don't have any personal experience with that. I don't know if you do, Holly, but I would suggest it's maybe not the best idea in terms of wanting to keep things separate. I think it is incredibly valuable to have two separate phones that do not connect in any way. Yeah. And you only I only log on to my Jenna social media on my Jenna phone, and I only log on to my personal social media on my personal phone, and same with everything. You want to keep one of them off your Wi-Fi at your home, because if you have two devices connecting to the same Wi-Fi regularly, your shit's going to get connected. You got to be really paranoid about it, I think.
What we mean by that is things will come up as suggestions to friends, or your, various social media accounts will come up. There's just too much these days that technology, for some reason, is trying to make us all connected to people.
Loves it.
I'd be friends with you. I'd follow you if I care. I'm not going to, there's people I don't friend or follow or whatever for a reason. Stop throwing them in my face, social media. There've been reports. I mean, I've heard of workers who have had a booking with a client and then like a couple of hours after the booking picked up their phone and seen, a suggestion of their personal social media account.
I had that a number of times years ago.
Even a proximity-based thing is it's pretty hectic.
And the next step to that is I would highly recommend not having your legal name on any social media and having everything private and making sure that your profile picture, which on any social media is normally public, making sure that is not a picture of your face or a photo that you use on your work social media as well. No matter what you do to try and keep things separate, as Holly said, they really want to connect everything. Yeah. So clients are going to come across your personal social media accounts. Yeah. It's going to happen. So you want to do everything you can to keep them locked down and keep up like plausible deniability, I guess. And if they go, is this you? You can go, what? No? Who's that? Just a picture of a dog. But it better not be your dog that you've also splashed all over your social media,
Yeah. But even if it is something that is recognisable as your social media, as long as you've got it locked right down so nobody can see your friends list, your posts, anything that's accessible or private about your life, and that you've got a pseudonym, you're using a fake name on all of your other social media accounts, then, what will they find? They've seen a social media account with a fake name. Maybe it's got a picture of you, but there's no information there. So that would be my advice. I probably would suggest not to have your face on those social media profile pics, but
But then you do get that satisfaction of them being like, oh, hello, Sally Sugar Tits. Yeah. And you're like, oh, you found my
fake
pseudonym.
Name. Yeah.
Aren't you clever? So that's kind of fun.
Yeah. I wonder how many clients out there think that they've found, something personal about me, and well, not clients even. Again, it's very rarely clients who it's often people you've had this very loose parasocial relationship with. They've or they've inquired for a booking, and then they've and they're the ones who send you messages like trying to do the catch out game. Oh, hello, Sally Sugar Tits. Like they think it's some sort of power thing, and you're like, oh, so powerful, my fake name, oh,
quaking,
intimidated. Yeah. So it's really important, to make sure that if you do have personal social media, and if you do wish to maintain that you at least make your accounts private and try to keep some fake information in there so that people find it harder to be a nuisance, basically.
It's probably worth mentioning that it's next to impossible these days to buy a phone and or a phone plan without giving out your legal information. And that's really shitty. And I don't have an answer for you, even like prepaid and stuff. Like back in the day, you could literally just buy burner phones, but they ain't having that no more. So that is frustrating. Oh, and like if you're an iPhone person, you don't want to have your Apple ID like connected on both phones because it'll connect it like all. You just really got to think about all that stuff.
Yeah. I have one Android and one iPhone for that reason. Yeah.
That is very smart. I do not.
Because, it will just, even if you say don't sync this, don't do that, these days they really think that they're being helpful when they're not.
It's that fabulous time of the week where we thank our extraordinary patrons. We have two new very generous somebodies. They are Steve and Antikinus.
Squeak, squeak.
Our Eve... Cool. Okay, we'll leave that in.
Yes,
Our
please.
even more generous somebodies are Timmy, Andrew, Adam Smith, James E., Lachlan, Sub London, Miss Billy, Nora Knightley, Leslie, Scott Watson, Andrew, Our Secret Admirer, Wheezy, Ellen, Liam,
Fritz Your Tits, Mr. E, Scott C, Simon, Skippy, FN, Our Footstool, Greenie, Ophelia Parker, Aaron and Cobber. Our extremely generous somebodies are Aaron, Andrew, Pete, Sienna Saint, Brino, Adam Moore, Nick, Wombat and B&J. So that wraps up our introduction to Just the Tips. You're looking to become a independent, private, full-service sex worker. Is that the title? It's a long title.
Maybe it's a long title. It is long, but it's not that long. I think we went with Just the Tips, so you want to be an independent escort. part one. It is long.
Let's consider it. So yeah, thanks so much for
throw
joining
it in
us.
the hat and discard it.
Discard the entire hat. Thanks so much for joining us, as always, guys. And as we've already mentioned, this is all very vague advice that we're giving. Don't take any of it too seriously. This is just our guidance from our own experiences, and hopefully somebody out there finds some of it useful. And for those who aren't planning to become an escort, maybe it gives you a little bit of insight into some of the challenges that escorts face, and hopefully that's also interesting. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye. Please look out for us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. Our name everywhere is Somebody You Pod, as in podcast. Our Patreon starts at just $3 a month, and you can get all of our episodes ad-free and a day early, plus bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes action, bloopers, and more. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the voices of sex workers. And remember, somebody you love might just be a sex worker.